Today is May the 9th. It is Europe Day. To be honest with you, a few years ago, I didn't know that there was such a thing as Europe Day. Quite frankly, prior to 2016, I didn't really have that much interest in the EU. I just knew it was something that kind of functioned in the background, but I never understood how much of an impact it had on my life. Unfortunately, in the mid-10s, Nigel Farage, Richard Tice, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Boris Johnson, Michael Gove, Aaron Banks and loads of other privately educated millionaires got together and decided that it was in our best interests to leave the EU. They convinced a lot of people to vote to leave the EU. Now, I've been fortunate enough to visit every country in the world. I might have mentioned it. And out of the 201 countries in the world that I visited, only about 40 could claim to be advanced economies, with 3/4 of them, 30 of them, being in Europe. I realised that if the UK left the EU, it would struggle to sell goods and services to other countries because a lot of these other countries just didn't have any money to buy anything. I'm not the world's greatest entrepreneur, but I kind of understand that in order to make money, you've got to sell something, whether that's your time or merchandise or widgets or whatever the hell it is. And I don't think there's too many people in West Africa, unfortunately, who can afford our Nissan Qashqais. Plus the fact I didn't trust any of the people who were advocating for Brexit. It was the worst of us. It was like the worst people imaginable in politics at that time were advocating for Brexit. People that I wouldn't agree on about anything else in politics at all. And I do, to some extent, understand that some people voted to leave the EU because they didn't much like David Cameron or Jeremy Corbyn, who were supposed to be pushing us to stay in the EU with their completely lackluster, lukewarm, milky toast response to any question about, hey, why should we stay in the EU? Oh, I don't know, it might be bad if we leave. Yeah, good job, guys. I voted to remain in the EU in 2016, and I felt this grief when we voted to leave. This sense of hollowness inside me. And after the vote, I actively campaigned for the UK to remain in the EU. And after the 2017 election, after Theresa May made a pig's ear of it, she lost her majority. Jeremy Corbyn couldn't even beat Theresa May. I thought, oh my God, we might have a chance here. We might have a chance at overturning the stupidest thing that any advanced nation has ever done to itself in the history of the world. In September 2017, I was the MC at one of the first big marches and rallies against Brexit. In 2018, I started the Three Blokes in the Pub podcast to discuss the dire effects of Brexit with experts in pubs. I met with politicians from all over the UK, in Ireland, in France, in Germany, in Spain, in Gibraltar. And we would discuss how Brexit would affect trade, music, the arts, culture, everything, the economy. And I remember the moment I was standing outside the World Trade Organization in Geneva. Yes, I'm not a keyboard warrior. I went to Geneva. I went to the WTO. I spoke to people with connections at the WTO. I can't say who because of Chatham House rules or something. But oh my God, that moment outside when I realized just how disastrous Brexit was going to be for the United Kingdom. I almost welled up for my country. And I'm not even much of a patriot, to be honest with you. Some people believe that the UK deserved the consequences of Brexit due to its history of slavery and imperialism, etc. And I totally get that. But nevertheless, the UK is still the home of most of my friends and my family. I don't want to see them or this country or the people of this country suffer, even if they are so stupid that they voted for something as idiotic as Brexit. As demonstrably idiotic as Brexit. But then what do you expect when you have 30 years of tabloid twaddle telling people that all the problems in their life was because of the EU? You lost your job, it's the fault of the EU. Your wife's left you, it's the job of the EU. You can't get it up anymore, it's the fault of the EU, that is. And then, in 2019, Boris Johnson's Christmas came early as the weak, ineffectual leadership of the two other parties in England the Labour Party and the Lib Dems, granted him a general election in the middle of winter against an opposition leader who was the most unpopular opposition leader of all time. In fact, at the time of the election, he was the most unpopular leader of a major political party in any democracy anywhere in the world on that day. And yet they said, yeah, let's go for an election. And of course, it was an absolute triumph for the Brexiteers. And then a month later, in January, end of January, we officially kind of left the EU. And then we negotiated a deal eventually by the end of 2020, a deal that most people considered to be absolutely bloody awful. Most of the people who advocated for Brexit now try and avoid talking about it. And they know it was a mistake. Try talking to Nick Ferrari, another privately educated millionaire who went for Brexit, along with Rocco Forte, James Dyson, and that idiot who runs the now having to sell all their pubs off Wetherspoons chain, Tim Martin. All of them millionaires, all of them privately educated. All of them told you to vote out of the EU because they knew it would destroy this country economically and they could make a quick buck out of that. Jacob Rees-Mogg's father wrote a book called Blood on the Streets, in which they said, here's how to make money out of a crisis. But, my friends, there is hope on the horizon. I still have hope. According to a recent poll, 68% of young people in the UK want to rejoin the EU. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will continue to fight to get the UK back into the EU for the rest of my life, if it needs be, as I believe it is where we belong alongside our European brothers and sisters. Happy Europe Day, everyone.